Welcome back. 27 minutes left to go for market closing. 0.5% drop for the Nifty 50, below that 11,300 mark. And 27 minutes left to go. Let's see if we can manage to at least close above 11,300, because that's that psychological barrier, which probably gives us silver lining that if we manage to close above it. Nifty Bank is down 155 odd points. It's below that mark of 29,000. Broader markets have sold off. The advance decline ratio and the turnover numbers is something that I want to see whether or not there has been a pickup in the overall cash market turnover at this juncture. So about 29,000 already. We're half an hour to go, so you could anticipate this number to come closer to about 34,000, which is slightly higher than the last 10 days average that we've been seeing on the futures and options side. Also, considering that it's 1 day left to the F&M expiry, 14.5 lakh shares. I don't know whether that's the normal number that you would see on this day. Okay, that's what you've got in terms of the setup. But let's take it to Sharad Dubey then and find out what has made it to his list of Fab 4 stocks this afternoon. Sharad.
Hi Devina, the first stock I've picked up is Z, which is the stock went up as high as 5%. It's near its 2-month highs after the management stated in their commentary that they'd received a binding offer for stake sale. And also there is one more, they are hoping that the news will come. When it comes to the results, the Q1 results were above estimates on all fronts, and there was a robust domestic subscription growth, but the ad revenues were weak. Up next, we are having HDFC, which is up almost 2% after the company stated in its press release that the NHB circular which came out will have a less impact when it comes to growth of the company, and the company is having almost an exposure of almost 2% of almost less than the 2% of subvention scheme loans to the individual loans. Next stock we are having Torrent Pharma, which is up almost 9% after management stated that they are having a very positive outlook for its Indian markets, and also they still remain cautious for the US markets. The margins increased by almost 100 basis points to around 26.8% when they declare the results. And the last stock of the day is KRBL, which is up almost 11.8% after seeing a high volumes of almost 2 times its 20-day average, and the stock gaining for the third consecutive session.
All right, Sharad, thanks very much for that. Shiv Diwan of Edelweiss Securities is also joining us on the show this afternoon. Shiv, thanks very much for taking out the time. Give us a sense of what is it that you're advising clients to stay put, not get too perturbed by this downfall that we've seen, or probably things could get a bit more graver.
So I think this has been expected for some time. Over the last month we've seen a 7.5% fall on the Nifty, and we do believe that there could be some sort of sideways movement from here on. Our year-end target has been 12,000 on the Nifty, and that's what we continue to hold at the moment. But it doesn't mean that this is not going down any further. It's very possible. The thing to watch out for most importantly is how the rate cuts play out and what kind of OMOs the RBI continues to do. This quarter is something that we are already talking about, a 7% profit growth, as opposed to 12% that we've seen last year. And the assumption of a 25% sort of earnings growth for this year is something that's not going to be met. So we are probably going to see, a little bit of a downgrade on those numbers. So markets which are currently trading at around 17 times are trading at more like 18.5 if you actually take into consideration that downgrade. So to my mind, we aren't, it's not still very cheap, because we're still 1 standard deviation above normal, and even in terms of other emerging markets, we're at probably around 40-45%, which is the long-term average. But given kind of growth we are seeing, there is a likely chance of it going a little below that.
Shiv, it's not been a great sight. Indian markets have been underperforming in last 4 to 5 trading sessions compared to the globe. Just when you address Canara Bank's numbers, which are flashing there on your screen, the gross NPAs for the quarter are at about 8.7 versus 8.8, which we've seen. And the NI growth, that's down, I guess, 17% for the quarter, coming in at 3,240 crore. The profits have come in close to 330 crore versus 281 on year-on-year basis, and we've seen some bit of recovery coming for the stock actually off the day's low, but still sitting with some bit of cuts of about 2 to 2.5%. Come in here, Shiv, with regard to the banking numbers which have come in so far, the commentary has not been so good, especially from RBL Bank and also from the torchbearer of the industry, HDFC Bank, which highlighted that going ahead in the upcoming quarters, the growth from the retail book may not be that good. What have you made of the numbers so far, and is there anything that you're advising your clients to buy from this pack?
So again, yes, I mean, this is the first time in many quarters you've seen an HDFC Bank, a Bajaj Finance, IndusInd Bank, RBL, all of them who were generally the ones that people would look at investing into, have spoken about a slight slowdown. So there's no doubt that if those guys are slowing down a little bit, there is a little more pain for the tier 2, tier 3 banks as well. But having said that, we still believe that a 17-18% growth is extremely healthy for HDFC Bank, even though it's come off 24% over the last 3 quarters. So we still like that name, and we would still advise buying on any dips. Kotak Bank is another name that we continue to like. It's come out with a very good and steady performance. IndusInd Bank, is now starting to look quite interesting at these valuations, and numbers were decent. Valuations are attractive. So we would definitely like to play these names. We still would prefer these private banks over the PSUs or NBFCs at this moment in this sector.
Lower PCR ratio for IndusInd Bank concern you compared to the other private banks and the likes of ICICI, for that matter, Axis Bank?
So again, I think in IndusInd Bank you've seen this is going to be the first quarter with the merged with the merged entity. Our sense is that numbers are quite decent. They've shown growth in the vehicle financing book, where everyone's talking about a slowdown. Typically, what tends to happen is in a scenario like this, the larger banks, the ones tend to sort of gain market share, and that's exactly what we think will happen with the likes of IndusInd, HDFC, and the others. Yes, HDFC has been talking about a slight slowdown in retail as well as vehicle, but we believe that is on a base that they have been looking at, right? So we still believe a 15-17% growth, if that comes through, should be very strong and healthy for these names.
Okay, that's the word in the banking space. Torrent Pharma is up about 9% right now. Manav, come in here on the charts. Would you advise booking profits on Torrent Pharma at current levels, or do you see more upside?
Actually, looking at this chart for a weekly to monthly perspective, the prices after topping out close to the levels of 1960 declined more than 15-20%, and it's bouncing from its monthly support zone. If you look at the long-term horizon for this chart, it has been in a structural bull market, and this decline looks more or less corrective in nature. I sense as long as 1500 levels hold, I think that could be one of the medium-term stop loss for the stock, anybody who's holding for a long-term perspective. Yes, for a short-term trading opportunity, there is no risk reward at the current zone, since the prices are already up by 9%, but any short-term dip towards the levels of 1550 should ideally be looked to be bought at the lower levels. I believe 1500 should be the stop loss for a trading or the positional investing holding in this scenario. In the medium-term perspective or in the short-term, I think 1700, 1750 could be the ideal upside target that one can look out for.
Okay. That's Torrent Pharma. That's at 15.99 currently, up about 9% on the back of those good numbers. 32% rise in net profits for the counter. 2.5 million shares have been traded on that one. Auto continues to reel under pressure and doesn't seem to find a floor for some of these auto names today as well. The Nifty Auto Index is down a heavy 2% in the session. Shiv, what are you advising clients to do with auto if they do have it in their portfolio? And at some point in time before this entire collapse, there was a major bulk of portfolios that consisted of a majority of these auto stocks and these quality names like Maruti at the time, which touched about 9,800, from there now to about 5,800. So what does one do if they have all these stocks with them?
So, again, we have been strong proponents of, saying that, auto has gone through a bad cycle, and it probably will continue for a little while longer because liquidity issues still persist. We have not seen any improvement there, and that continues to, impact the industry. Yes, stocks have come off. Multiples are starting to look a little more attractive than they were probably 3 months back. But what we still are not seeing any serious signs of improvement coming through because demand is still a big concern. Most of the auto players have had to take production cuts, and because inventory levels are much higher than normal, and we still believe that this phenomenon would continue for probably at least a quarter more, if not more. valuations, like I said, are starting to look a little better, but I would wait for demand uptick to come through before before I'd advise getting into these names.
From a trading standpoint, though, at these current levels, Ruchit, M&M at 550, Maruti around 5800. I wouldn't put in a Tata Motors here, but even a Hero MotoCorp. Where do you stand on all of these three stocks?
I think if you first look at the Nifty Auto Index, and the trend still continues to be negative, and if I look at the support levels, then somewhere around 6750, 6800, the next support ranges. So I think from a very near-term perspective, we could see some more correction in most of these names. Also, if we look at this calendar year, then the pullback move in the broader markets, which was seen during the month of March and first half of April, the autos had not participated even then when there was a up move in the broader market. So I think the underperformance is likely to continue ahead. If one has to choose any stock for fresh investment at current levels, then I would recommend going long on the two-wheeler name, which is Bajaj Auto, because if we do relative strength analysis of Bajaj Auto with other autos names, then certainly this has been, this stock has shown a better relative strength compared to others, and it is trading around its long-term support, which is around 2400 to 2450. So a decline towards this support range of 2400 to 2450 could be used as a buying in Bajaj Auto. But for rest of the auto names, I would wait for some sort of confirmation or a high top high bottom structure to now get in from at least short to medium term perspective.
Okay, I just want to also pull up Interglobe Aviation, if we've not already covered that. The stock's up about 4.5% right now. News media suggesting that the Indigo co-founders are looking at resolving the outstanding issues. That's coming from one of the other media houses. And the stock's moved up quite smartly on the back of that. 1592, stellar operational performance this quarter. Not bad in terms of the passenger traffic growth as well. Not in comparison to what SpiceJet did, because SpiceJet actually managed to cede some market share from Interglobe Aviation. But overall, it wasn't bad at all for the counter. SpiceJet at 143 now. For both these counters, Shiv, if you do track aviation, what lies ahead according to you?
So we do like the aviation sector, and this is something we've been very positive on. Our call has been to buy and hold on to SpiceJet over Indigo. Of course, that's been the call between the two names, but I think the sector is going to do extremely well. This is the best quarter you've seen already, and I think the next quarter, next two quarters also seem to be quite interesting. On valuations, SpiceJet still looks convincing, and we would definitely look to add there. On Indigo, obviously, you've heard this this news that they are looking to settle differences, which is obviously a good sign for the company, because the fundamentals of the business are intact. They are doing well. All the parameters are doing well for the next, and expected to do well for the next few quarters at least. That will also do well from here.
Okay. We'll talk more stocks in just a few moments, but it's time now to get a quick dealing room check as to what dealers are recommending this afternoon. Our channel checks this afternoon what they suggest. Both Yatin Mota and Darshan Mehta here with us. Darshan, let's start with you.
Yeah, so one of the stocks that's been spoken about today is Torrent Pharma. It's up almost 9% in today's trade, given the numbers. One of the key reasons now, firstly, the numbers weren't blockbuster. It's pure short covering that's come into Torrent Pharma at this level. But dealers believe that such high prices won't sustain, given that the fundamentals didn't support the movement. So they believe that at high levels there could be selling pressure that could come in. The other stock that dealers are talking about is Kajaria Ceramics, which is down 8.5%. Again, dealers indicate that the weak commentary is something that has spooked investors. Despite coming out with strong numbers, Kajaria reported a very, very muted outlook in terms of, and they've managed to cut the guidance. So that is something. And finally, IndusInd Bank again is moved to the lowest point of the day. It's moved down almost 4%. Dealers indicate that some of the domestic funds are actively selling the counter, given that there is lack of clarity in terms of some of the asset quality and overall general weakness. But Yatin, what have you heard?
Darshan, all three stocks that we are talking right now is about the financial services industry and banks. HDFC Bank is something wherein dealers are expecting a general bounce back after the recent sell-off that we saw post the earnings. This is one stock wherein dealers are expecting some respite coming in after the recent correction. PNB, again, they will be reporting their earnings this week, and ahead of that, dealers are recommending a buy today, sell tomorrow kind of a strategy based on F&O trends. The stock was holding out nicely despite the market correction. Some profit taking in the last half an hour of trade, but dealers still believe, about some kind of a positive trend moving ahead. And IDFC First Bank, that is one stock wherein dealers do indicate that domestic funds are sellers in trade today. Remember, the stock is at a multi-year low. Clearly, the results as well as the asset quality is something that will be watched out for the earnings moving forward for IDFC Bank. But ahead of that, a lot of domestic funds are said to be sellers.
All right, yeah, Yatin as well as Darshan, thanks a lot for bringing that dealing room check. Just want to pull up V-Guard, which is reacting positively to its numbers. The net profit for the first quarter has come in at 52.4 crore versus our estimates of about 47.8. The revenues have come in at closer to 700 crore, and our poll was throwing a number of about 714. So clearly the bottom line seems to be slightly above what the estimates were, and of course the margins were also expected to expand. We were looking at a margin figure of about 9.2. We'll wait by for the margins have expanded actually to 10.2, which is higher than even our poll of about 9.2. So on year-on-year basis, margins have expanded by nearly 300 basis points. Operationally, a good quarter, and in fact, the expectation was that the strong summer will revive the stabilizer segment of the company, and the stock giving a thumbs up to the first quarter numbers of V-Guard, sitting with gains of about 1.6. Shiv, if you track this company V-Guard, what do you make of the numbers?
I mean, I've not really seen the numbers in detail, but prima facie, they definitely look good. In a scenario like this, the consumer durable space is something that would have also seen a little bit of a slowdown, but the numbers seem to suggest that, things are looking better for them. I do believe, in this whole space, whether it's Havells, Bajaj Electricals, Consumer Business, Crompton, and V-Guard, I think, there could be a little bit of, sideways movement in these names. While, again, like I said, I must admit that V-Guard numbers look good, but I would imagine multiples as well as the current demand trend would suggest that there could be some sideways movement here.
Okay, sideways movement. For the time being, the stock's up about 2.5%. Just 10 minutes to go for markets to shut shop. So let's get you some closing strategies from our technical experts. Richard, over to you first. Any BTST or any STBT for tomorrow's session?
I think one can look to buy Pidilite from a BTSC perspective. Last half an hour, the stock prices have moved higher with good volumes, and it's also on the verge of breakout from a trendline resistance. So I think the follow-up move should be there, looking at the volume pattern. So one can go long on Pidilite with stop loss below 1215, expecting target around 1260 to 65.
Manav, your closing strategy?
Yes, my buy call is on PVR. Actually, the prices have already witnessed a good breakout on the daily charts, and overall this stock has been an outperformer in this market decline. And looking at the overall momentum and the volume, it's definitely confirming for some more upside. A stop loss of 1790 on the lower side, or an upside target of 1860.
By the way, PVR will be coming out with its numbers tomorrow. It was up in a weak market yesterday, today as well, and some long positions were seen for this one on the futures side. Pull up Sadbhav Infra, that stock's perked up. It's up about 12% in trade, so some buying interest seen for this counter, up about 11%. And we've also seen, I was highlighting Berger Paints after Asian Paints number, that's sitting at day's high right now, 3% higher for the stock. Bata India has gone up in trade, whereas on the losing side, a lot of these NBFCs are down, so Manappuram Finance has seen correction. And remember, we've been highlighting Shriram Transport, which will be coming out with its numbers today. Last three sessions have not been great for this counter, and currently it trades just about closer to today's low with cuts of about 5%. Shiv, before we thank you and let you go, what's the top call after looking at the numbers that you're giving to your clients?
So we stick to three sectors. We continue to like infra, cement, and IT. While Infosys has been our top stock call for some time now, we continue to stick with it. And in a market like this, we still believe that it'll outperform. Cement is another space that we like. Shree Cement, Ultratech, and JK Cement are the names that we will be most bullish on. And on the infra side, while there isn't too much to play in terms of liquidity, but we continue to like L&T, NCC, and maybe even a PNC infra.
Shiv, actually, I'll just follow up with one last question. Excuse me for that. But Bajaj Finance, 3166, down 3.5. Now, post that small issue that had happened, they issued the note on what they would do in quarter one. that didn't seem to be bad, despite that the stock is correcting. Is it because of the anticipation that the commentary, as has been the case with most of the companies, would be bad and therefore some bit of valuation de-rating is warranted?
Yes, I think that seems to be the case because stocks with higher multiples are the ones that are taking a little bit of a knock because, with these names, one thing you tend to expect is that they will do no wrong and they will continue to buck the trend, which hasn't actually happened. So you saw a little bit of a drop in HDFC Bank. You're seeing the same happening in Bajaj Finance. And Bajaj Finance has been a tad bit expensive in terms of price to book. If Mr. Bajaj has mentioned a couple of things a couple of weeks back in terms of slowdown of sales, that will definitely have an impact. I do believe anyways for the NBFC space, the slowdown is definitely there to stay for a little bit longer till you start seeing some serious transmission of liquidity. And so I think Bajaj Finance also may see this kind of movement for some time.
Okay, we'll leave it at that, Shiv. Thanks much for taking the time out and joining us and giving us that perspective. Appreciate your time. Good having you.
Thanks a lot.
Well, final thoughts. Ruchit, Bajaj Finance on the charts.
So the stock in last few trading sessions have already seen a decent correction, and if I look at some of the long-term supports, then around 3,000, 2,900 there's a decent support level, and I think the stock would tend to again resume its uptrend from that support levels. So the longer-term chart has not been distorted, and this corrective move in last few days just seemed to be a correction within an uptrend. Maybe 100, 200 rupees downside move could be there, but if the stock comes in the range of 2,900 to 3,000, then one should use this as a buying opportunity from medium to long term again.
Manav, if you had a long call on a Maruti intraday, what would you do? The market is looked wobbly. Maruti is not at the lows of the day, but certainly trading lower. What would you do?
See, Maruti has a very important support at 5,700 on the lower side. So for me, holding on to Maruti with a stop loss of 5,700 is definitely a call that I wouldn't mind taking it. It's only purely on the trading perspective. So as long as 5,700 holds, there is a chance of a pullback rally which could take the stock towards the levels of 6,200, 6,300. So I think it's better that one can play this for a short-term retracement on the upside, because the risk-reward ratio is quite favorable at the current levels. And one can also look to buy out-of-the-money options for the next month series. So I think taking a contra bet into Maruti at the current levels would definitely can give you that extra returns that one can look out for.
You're saying that you will take a fresh call, even if you didn't have a call, would you initiate a fresh long?
Yes, I would. In fact, when we are looking at the weekly support zone, since the prices are in deep oversold levels, and looking at the overall formation, I think the positional stop loss for the stock can be placed at 5,700 on the lower side, and keeping that pitch in play. I think with the risk reward that we can look into it, since most of the oscillators are hinting for a positive divergence. I think the upside target of 6,200 holds. So I believe one should not take an intraday bet into this, but a short-term positional bet can be placed into Maruti.
All right. Just one final question from mine on Interglobe Aviation, because that stock is inching up now and trading at the highest point of the day, 16.12. Look at that one. It's really spiked very smartly in the last half an hour, 45 minutes of trade. Wonder if SpiceJet is doing the same as well. I don't really know. I've seen the SpiceJet stock feature on the list of the gainers, but Interglobe certainly is. No, SpiceJet is not. So Interglobe Aviation has moves of its own right now. Ruchit, one quick thought. Would you initiate a fresh trade on this one?
I think yes, Neeraj, the kind of volumes that we have seen in this recent up move in last 2-3 trading sessions, the stock now seem to be again heading towards its all-time high level. So the previous high of around 1,700 could be tested and even surpassed in short term. So even at current levels, I would recommend one can initiate fresh long positions, keeping stop loss below 1,530 for first target around 1,700. And once if 1,700 is broken, then we can now keep a revised stop loss and continue to hold the long positions.
Right, Jamin, stay on. We'll take in final thoughts from you, but here's how the markets are shutting shop. Not too bad, not too great either. We are 0.5% lower at the start of the trading day, with the Asian markets doing what they were doing. I don't think too many people anticipated this, but we're down 0.5%. The Nifty Bank 159 odd points. Some private names have looked slightly shaky in today's session as well. The mid caps and the small caps will come up on your screen about 1.5% lower, and that tells you the story, doesn't it? We may argue about what the Nifty is doing, but that's not the story. Mid caps and small caps, which are arguably looking very good in terms of value, are getting butchered in the last few days. We'll talk about that in a bit. First, let's talk about the large caps and what they have done. Z tops the charts really 5.5% or 5% higher for trade. Asian Paints, after the results, ending up at the day's highs, 4% in HUL. We may speak about how the volume growth has come off, but maybe the market is thrilled about the margins and the fact that it is probably the lesser of the evils in the markets right now, 2% higher. HDFC a couple of percentage points. HDFC Bank bounces back about 1% and Kotak Bank about 0.2%. What's not done well? UPL 5.5%, Adani Ports 5% lower, Indiabulls Housing 4.5%. iShares has some pain to itself, as does IndusInd Bank. Both of them are down about 4% apiece. Britannia down about 3%. The list is endless really, but Bajaj Finance stands out here too. This is one NBFC name where the results are anticipated to be good, but the market is probably discounting slightly poor commentary in line with what some of the others have said. So large caps, mixed bag, but 0.5% lower. Mid caps 1.5% lower. Navneet, it's not been a great hunting ground today.
That's right, Neeraj. Underperformance seen for the broader markets today. The mid-cap index did tumble quite sharply, and the market breadth was also not great. I'll still start off with some gainers first. KRBL, which has been a beaten down counter in the recent past, saw some bit of recovery in today's trade. That stock's up about 8 to 8.5%. Indigo saw a sharp recovery in the second half of the session after some media houses reported that both the promoters who were having an issue in the past, that issue could get resolved, owing to which you saw that recovery coming by. Berger Paints, after Asian Paints, good set of numbers, rub-off impact seen for this one. This one has not come out with its numbers yet, but still 2% higher here. Aptic was up and about. That stock gained about nearly 11% today. Sadbhav Infra witnessed some buying interest in today's trading session. That stock's closing with gains about closer to 13%. And towards the fag end, you also had V-Guard coming out with its numbers, which were better than what the street was expecting. Margins went up expanded by 300 basis points on year-on-year basis. As you can see on the screen, the stock went up after the numbers came, closing with gains of 2.5%. On the losing side, some earnings reaction as well. M&M Financial posting bad set of numbers. Asset quality deteriorated. Profits fell over 70%. The stock's down about 11%. Kajaria Ceramics, where numbers were just about decent. It was the cut in the guidance on revenue as well as the volume growth, which did not go down well with the street. That stock's closing with cuts of 8.5%. Shriram Transport will be coming out with its numbers. It's been down for the entire week, and sharper cuts have been seen yesterday. Also, it was down about 5%. Piramal Enterprises, Manappuram Finance, and Dewan Housing. So the NBFC space is not looking good at all. All these stocks saw a sharper correction of between 4 to 5%. In fact, DHFL closing with cuts of about 7%.
All right, there's still 30 seconds left to go for market closing, and I don't think anything's going to change materially in the next 30 seconds. So it's pretty much what you've got on the screen. Nifty Bank ending with cuts of closer to 200 odd points. It's looks like a norm over the last few days now. Nifty 50 at 11,268. So no, did not manage to rescale 11,300. That's going to be a psychological dent in terms of one milestone which you've taken down. 62 odd points under. Sensex is at 37,848. Coming to the broader market picture, before that, just some quick contributions coming in there, and the lead laggards of today. Reliance Industries, a big 11-point drop on the index. Following that, 9 points on Axis Bank. So it's not really the quantum of the cuts that you're seeing in these larger names. It's the sheer number of stocks that have dropped today. So it's just a handful of, I think, 9 or 10 stocks that have meaningfully contributed on the upside, and the rest, all of them have slumped in trade today. So that's why you've got 108 odd points, while the top 4 have just contributed just about 20 or 30 odd points.
That's right. In fact, selling was seen across the board, even for broader markets, and the market breadth will show you that where declines have been dominating for the last many days. And as you can see, I think throughout the sessions, we had more of declines compared to the advances. So the market breadth continues to deteriorate. But in terms of participation, let's see how the turnover panned out. NSE cash, it's been hovering in that range of 32,000 to 33,000 for the week. And for the NSE F&O, of course, it's picked up one day before the expiry tomorrow. Approximately 15.6 lakh crore is the turnover recorded towards the end.
All right, getting in some closing comments. Then tomorrow is going to be a crucial day on how you start looking at the next series. That's the August series. Ruchit, how would you prep before that?
So as of now, the short-term trend continues to remain on the negative side. But if I look at the daily chart, then the next support for the index is placed somewhere around 11,150 to 11,180. two main indicators. One is the 200-day moving average is placed around 11,150, and the 100% retracement of the recent correction after budget added to the pullback move around 11,700 gives us a target projection around 11,180. So any existing short positions, if the market comes around 11,180 to 150 range, one should look to book profits on the short positions over there, and we may see a pullback move from those levels. On the higher side, it's been fifth trading session where the previous day high has not been crossed on the Nifty. So for tomorrow's session, 11,360, which is today high, would be the resistance to watch out for.
Okay, Manav, your thoughts?
See, at the current levels, we have seen markets show some sort of a divergence, at least coming on the 60-minute chart. So it's indicating that on the immediate basis, unlikely that we could see a very sharp follow-on moves. 11,200 and 250 are the important support clusters, and we are somewhere close to that. And since it's an expiry tomorrow, I believe that the expiry should be somewhere for the index are roughly around 11,300 levels, and once the index manages to break above 11,350, 360 is when you can expect a retracement rally to come into the picture. But for now, we are not going to shorts at the current levels, but we will be looking for some positive reversal signals in the markets to initiate long positions.
All right. Got that. Gentlemen, we leave it at that. Thank you so very much, Ruchit and Manav. Appreciate you both taking on the time this afternoon. And with that, we conclude this the show, Countdown. Thanks so very much for watching. From Neeraj, Navneet, myself and the entire team that's put the show together. Market Wrap comes up next.